In 2020, portals leading to other dimensions began to appear. They appeared all over the planet. This led the whole world before something crazy starts. Most countries have sent their troops to these gates to find out more about them, but not a single person returned alive. Then hordes of monsters began to emerge from this god-forsaken gate. They were so powerful and invincible that all modern weapons could do nothing against them, and they began to attack all the people who happened to be in their way. But some patrons began to choose people who they endowed with amazing power and abilities. They were called hunters. With the hunters at the forefront, humanity began to strike back. Because of this, their abilities began to progress more and more with each kill. Patrons can grant active hunters additional strength and abilities, with the help of which they become even more powerful and as a result invincible. Among the countless number of hunters, there appeared one whose strength was immeasurable, an immortal army of soldiers and the ability to control fire. The whole world called him the Demon King. He possessed the special ability Theplayr. Only he could progress through hunting. But it was ruled by 12 great heroes who were equated with gods. His existence was erased from the pages of history forever, and people who called themselves gods to create Eden. Hunters began to be considered a new step in evolution, and those who could not become hunters turned into slaves. Hunters began to rule the world, and in this way, 100 years have already passed. Life has changed and acquired new colors. The boy ran very fast, and it was noticeable that he was running away from someone. Sweat was already dripping from him, but he continued to run headlong. A man was sitting on the tree that the boy was running through. He asked the boy if he had finished yet. The boy replied that he had already reached his limit and he had absolutely no energy left to move on. Although he said that he wanted to change the whole world. But with such an attitude, he can hardly become a hunter. In order for patrons to notice him, you need to go beyond your capabilities. The man's name was Sangha. The guy asked him, when he was first noticed by a patron, or if he was also going over his limit and moving on. Sangha replied that it wasn't like that because he was supported and helped from the beginning. The boy lowered his eyebrows, and it was clear on his face that he thought it was completely unfair. Sangha said that life is not fair. The indicator was even that the boy was an ordinary person, and he was a hunter. He offered the boy to do something else if he could not continue and did not have the strength. Sangha held out his hand in front of him. He spoke a few unintelligible words, and a stick appeared in his hand, and threw it to the boy. Was it really the inventory of a real hunter? He was amazed every time he saw such a thing. The man said that there is nothing to be surprised about. As soon as he becomes a hunter, he will immediately understand everything. The guy smiled, and he didn't seem to really believe it. After he learned that his parents were killed by hunters, Sangha gave him a book as a keepsake. It described a fight the hunters had started, and he wanted to fix it. Sangha helped him get through all those years of training. But when the thought of what he was able to achieve creeps into his head, he gets the impression that he will never be able to become a hunter. But in reality, whether he will become a hunter or not, only heaven decides. So they say in Eden. The man hit the boy and said it was all a lie. He asked not to think about the bad, and he will definitely become a hunter. Sangha assured him of this, and asked if he still had the book he had given him earlier. He kept asking the boy about it. Of course, he had it, and kept it in a secret place, because it was a memory of his parents. It was the autobiography of a forgotten hero whose history was erased by 12 gods. Sangha kept asking about her, but the boy promised never to lose her. The boy handed this book to the hunter and said that if this hero were alive now, the world would be kinder and would remain the best place in the universe. A woman watched their conversation, who finally found them. She started using her magic against them. But Sangha noticed it. Her blast wave was moving clearly towards them. But Sung-gu pushed the boy away from him. He fell far from the explosion site under a tree. There was a huge explosion, and the woman watched it. Her task was to kill them. The boy was shocked. He could not understand what was happening here. Then this woman came down to him. He was able to get a close look at her and realized that it was a hunter. But why did she appear here? She ordered him to bow before her. After these words, he immediately fell to his knees. But the thing was that his body just did what she ordered. He couldn't do anything. His body was out of control. Other hunters descended from the sky. They bowed their heads before the woman. As it turned out, it was the queen of all Eden, Lady Athena. The boy was surprised that before him stood the ruler of Eden of the highest rank. But what did one of the 12 founding gods of Eden forget? She said that he could not have run far and ordered the hunters to capture him and bring him to her. They understood the task, but they rose high into the sky at the same time. They only managed to get on his tail. The woman wondered who this boy was and what he had forgotten here. She didn't see a drop of magic in him. The boy understood that he now had the autobiography of the demonic king. And it is she who hides the dirty crimes of the 12 heroes, which they have been hiding all along. He hoped that she would not suspect him of this and would simply let him go. She said it was just a worthless slave. After that, she turned around and walked away. He was afraid to look up because he didn't know if she had already left. But as soon as he wanted to get up, she flew to him in a second and said that she felt magical power from him, although almost no traces of it remained. His heart beat faster and his breathing became more frequent. His look was frightened and he was sweating all over. Seeing how he froze, she guessed that he might have something that could not be shown. Athena leaned over to the boy and told him to show and tell everything he knew. His body moved by itself. Now he understood what the true power of the gods was. He tried to control his limbs and ordered them not to move, but it was useless. He understood that if this book fell into her hands, then he was dead. She could even make him talk. The boy took out a book and started talking about it. This is the story of a demonic king who was a true hero to mankind. Aiden definitely didn't want the world to know his story. Athena picked up this book. The boy was scared and thought that everyone close to him would die. If something goes wrong, his entire district can be wiped off the face of the planet. This is exactly how Aiden works. They forcefully take away or destroy what is in their way. He couldn't just give this book away. Tears began to appear in his eyes. Athena set this book on fire and destroyed it with her magical power. She was finally able to find her. It was a biography of a demon king. She did not know how she had appeared to such a slave, but she found it and took it away. At that moment, Song-gu called her and attacked her. All the land nearby was broken. Song-gu grabbed the book that Athena picked up. The boy burst into tears when he saw his mentor. He was saved. Song-gu said that he can't cry because he is a man. He praised him for holding up well and doing a great job of keeping the book safe with him. The boy asked who Song-gu really was. How could he stand up to one of Athena's 12 gods? He apologized and said that he did not have much time to tell him everything in detail. Song-gu didn't think he would be found so quickly. The guy kept saying the same thing all the time, that he wants to change the world. Therefore, he decided to make a bet on someone like that and gave the book back to the boy. Song-gu said that the hunters have declared themselves gods and are ruling the common people. Anyone as weak as the boy is like domestic cattle, waiting for someone stronger to deal with him. If he has the power to change the world, a power that can withstand 12 gods, then will he still want to change the world for the better? While the boy stood in thought, Athena recovered and activated her magic power. She wanted revenge. Athena was advancing, and they had no time to think. Song-gu wanted the boy to answer him clearly, because he will not be able to face Athena alone. The guy replied that he agreed, and if he could get hold of such a power, he would definitely change the whole world. Song-gu was satisfied with such an answer, and he pierced the boy with his sword. But the boy did not expect such a mentor. The boy's eyes immediately became bright yellow. Song-gu said if he meets him there to be nice to him. The boy flew into the air and did not understand what was happening around him. It seemed to split into small pieces. Then it completely disappeared. A contract was executed and patronage obtained. The guy appeared in a completely different dimension. It seemed to be assembled from tiny particles. Lai Jun was getting used to the new place. He was sure that he had been pierced by a sword, but now there was not a single scratch on him. The body felt completely different than before. The power that was now felt in his body, and this voice that told him about receiving patronage. Has he become a hunter now? But he absolutely did not understand where he was now. There was an unclear area around him, as if he was on another planet. The magical power he feels emanates from his body. Was he inside the gate? He heard footsteps not far from him. But he is not ready to make new acquaintances. Therefore, he decided that he needs to quickly hide at least until the moment when he understands where he is and how he got here. When he hid, he saw a goblin. And now he was absolutely sure that he was inside the gates of the dungeon. Goblins are the initial and weakest monsters, but they were much more dangerous than one could imagine. That is why they are also called rookie killers. Because of their excellent sense of smell and hearing, as well as their crazy hunting style. For newcomers who appear here without any information, meeting them is tantamount to death. The boy hoped that this goblin would disappear and not notice him. But he smelled the boy and noticed him. He was forced to find a way out and somehow solve this situation. He grabbed the stone. The boy didn't understand if what he learned from Song-gu would work for him. But he had no choice now. He can only rely on the abilities he studied with the hope of becoming a hunter in the future. He threw a stone to distract the goblin, and he did it well. The goblin turned away and began to look in a completely different direction. At that time, the boy grabbed his hand and cut off his head. He was surprised. The goblin flew into small pieces after his impact. The boy was shocked by his strength. He just wanted to scare him and steal the weapon. He still could not believe that he most likely became a hunter. He received a message that an angel had paid attention to him. He knew it was a demon king. While the boy was thinking, a whole horde of goblins was already heading towards him. They heard absolutely any sound. There were a lot of them, even more than expected. And the worst part was that the guy behind all these goblins was their leader, the boss of the goblin dungeon. The hero thought that this was his end. He was very sorry because he had only recently awakened as a hunter. He understood that he was no match for their leader. But the boy remembered Song-gu's words that a real man never despairs. And if he has the power to change the world and which is able to resist the 12 gods, will he still want to change this world? And the boy answered then, if he can take possession of such a power, then he will definitely change this world. Then he realized that he could not die so easily here and now. He had no right to it until he changed this world. Angel paid attention to him, and it was a chance that is given only once in a lifetime. The hero sped up, and with the help of his skills and anger, he began to destroy the goblins one by one. He was motivated by his promise, and couldn't let Song-gu down. There were fewer and fewer goblins. He destroyed them as if in training. He cut off the hands and heads of some. Some he divided in half. The rest simply died from weapons. And his efforts were not in vain. Memories of the teacher appeared before him again, and he moved to another dimension where there were a lot of autumn trees. And it happened because he raised his level. He remembered Song-nu saying that when he looked at this boy, he began to understand what a genius looked like. Ordinary people have limits, but if he received patronage, then he was sure that this boy would become a hunter who was second to none. Meanwhile, the hero was able to raise his level again. All the goblins were destroyed. He was able to do it, but only one remained. Their strongest leader. The boy looked at him with a pitiless look. After that, he jumped on him and struck him. But he was very powerful. And the hero just flew away from him as if from a trampoline. Even if it was a goblin, it was still a boss. In the rules, it is written that in order to defeat the goblin leader, you need to be at least an S-rank hunter. Otherwise, there was no point in even trying. The boy had just woken up and most likely had an E or F rank. I wonder if someone like him who just woke up can kill the goblin leader. He had no choice but to try to do so. He took the stick and wanted to put all his strength into his blow. He adjusted himself to concentrate all his power in one point. The spear is the weapon of the Demon King, and also the best weapon he has. And now he has the authority to use it. The end of the spear caught fire. The boy began to prepare for an attack and began to run away. He was maximally motivated at this moment. The hero put all his strength into this attack, and he was able to destroy the leader and raise his level again. He coped with this challenge, but now the power of his spear was reduced to 0. But as expected, after the boss battle, it was all he was capable of. And the boy fell powerlessly to the ground. But he was lying there alone among the corpses. Newborn knights entered this territory. The entire area was littered with goblin corpses. They did not understand who could kill them all. Even the goblin leader was dead. Then they saw this guy who was alive and still breathing. They approached him and began to look around. The hero was taken to the hospital. He was connected to various machines and given a large amount of blood, because after the battle he lost a very large number. He opened his eyes and realized that he was in a hospital, and he made sure that it was not really a dream. Athena appeared out of nowhere and almost took the Demon King's autobiography from him. After being pierced by Songa's sword, he woke up inside the gate. And because of the leader of the goblins, with whom he faced, he almost died. But he was able to survive thanks to the possession of fire, which was given to him by an angel. But after that, he switched off because he received a large number of serious injuries. He thinks he was saved by the hunters who entered the gate. The nurse went to the boy's ward and said that he is now strictly forbidden to move and get out of bed. She asked if he had a headache and how he was feeling. She said hunters from the top league guild found him and brought him here. If it were not for them, it is not known what would have happened to the hero next. He asked, not knowing who it was. The nurse said that the boy was badly injured, so he was very lucky. He was injured in the incident that took place inside the gate. Therefore, someone from the association had to come. She asked him to rest for now. The nurse really liked him, and she wanted to tell everyone about him as soon as possible. The boy stopped the nurse before leaving the ward and asked what year it is now. She said that his memory is now recovering and most likely he has a headache now. It was now 2022. He was shocked because 2022 is 100 years before his birth. Gates began to appear in 2020. And in 2022, many hunters began to create names for themselves. It was an era of heroes. The hero remembers again. Songu said that the hunters declared themselves gods and ruled over ordinary people. Anyone as weak as him is like domestic cattle waiting to be slaughtered. He thought back to Seong-go's question about the power that would allow him to save this world. In his time, where you had to be special to become a hunter, this was an era where hunters received patronage directly from patrons. And he got this opportunity. The boy began to disconnect the devices from his body with his own hands. Droppers and a device that measures pressure. The nurse warned that it is very dangerous to get up in such a state, let alone go somewhere. The guy got out of bed and said he was fine. He did not have dizziness as before. He asked the nurse where the bathroom was in this hospital. She replied that the bathroom is near the entrance. He went into the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. He was completely different from the little boy he used to be. The hero did not believe that this body now really belonged to him. He never had such muscles. And now he was taller than 190 centimeters. But the face was very similar. However, his body and appearance seemed to belong to another person. He thought that someone had entered his bathroom. A representative from the association came to him. He introduced himself to Kim Soo and gave his business card. After what happened at the gate, the boy was saved by the guild of the higher league. He was told that the boy had certain lapses in memory. The representative asked if this was true. The boy realized that the nurse had told him about it. The representative asked to tell in more detail about what he remembered. His name, data, family. How did he even get into the gate, and does he remember anything at all? After he was brought to the hospital, the association itself tried to find information about the boy. But it is clear, as they told him, that nothing could be found. No name, no family, or anything. He could not be told everything so that his information from the past would now appear. They say the memory loss could be related to what happened at the gate, or waking up as a hunter. The guy said he was 23 years old and his name was... It so happened that the name of the demonic king immediately came to his mind. Lee Jun. For some reason, he got his name mixed up with that of the demon king. For some reason, he thought it was the right decision. He didn't remember anything else. The representative said it was a minor problem. Then the man asked if the boy felt anything when he was inside the gate. He replied that he heard an incomprehensible voice inside the gate. He heard the words, "I will be your patron," and he thought that he was dreaming of it. The man's hands became numb, and he tried to move them. He said that most likely the boy had become a hunter and asked if he knew anything about them. The hero replied that they seemed to be specially selected people. The representative stood up and said that he was very grateful that the boy was able to give him time. And after their conversation, someone else may come to him, but the association will definitely contact him again. The man bowed and said that maybe the boy would be scared by this information, but he had become someone really important to their whole world. He wished him all the best and a speedy recovery. The boy looked at the representative through the window and pondered his every word. A virtual screen appeared in front of him. His status was indicated there. It was one of the Demon King's abilities. The reason why the 12 heroes tried to hold back the Demon King, and the reason why the Demon King could grow stronger, faster than the rest of the heroes. Edom was so afraid of it that he erased all mention of it. The Demon King was special. To be precise, he was a hunter. The guy decided to check his status. He was called Player, the same status as the Demon King. Although hunters needed the patron's permission to grow stronger, he could do so without any help. He was also the only one who could get stronger through hunting. If you put all the factors together, he is the Demon King. And it is he who has the status of a player in this world. And he has all these abilities that others cannot have. Meanwhile, in the hospital, the boy met a nurse in the ward. She congratulated him on receiving the status of a hunter. But he was not sure that this achievement should be congratulated. The girl was convinced of this because it was equivalent to winning the lottery. Even the lowest F-rank hunters can become so rich that an ordinary person cannot even imagine it. Even without fighting the monsters at the gate, there are many things that become available to them. He can now become a blacksmith who forges magical items with the help of mana infusion. Or he can become a bodyguard of serious people. Huge queues will form from rich people hoping to hire him. The boy knew all this very well, even without the help of a nurse. Thanks to the fact that those who are not chosen are completely powerless. And are these the things he should be happy about? The nurse almost forgot to deliver a gift from Kim Soo, a man from the association. These are the items that were on him during the portal incident. They said that most likely he will not be able to wear them anymore, but decided to return them. Maybe he will need them. The nurse congratulated the boy on his discharge from the hospital and wished him not to get into such trouble again. The city lived and functioned to the maximum. People went about their business. The boy left the hospital and realized that this is the era of heroes, Gangnam. Before, he could not even think about the fact that he would be able to visit here. Everything looked very bright and peaceful. A representative from the association approached Lee Jun and said that he had been waiting for him for a long time. He offered the boy to go to the association with him, because he thought it was a bad idea for a newborn hunter to walk around town. The man convinced Lee Jun that once they registered him as a hunter, he would be given an apartment right after that. From time to time, they have people who have a similar situation. He said that he wanted to make Lee Jun happy right away, because the analyses showed that he is an S-rank hunter. There aren't many people in their country who get an S-rank right after waking up. He offered to continue on his way, and he would explain the rest after they registered Lee Jun. When they arrived at the Hunters Association, the boy immediately approached the manager. She said that people usually get F or E ranks when they wake up. Hunter ranks are in alphabetical order. The higher his rank, the more prospects open to him, and also a special relationship to him will grow. Finally, his registration was completed without any problems. And now the representative wants to show the apartments where Lee Jun will live. When the boy saw his new home, he was as surprised as possible. It was a very cozy and spacious apartment. There was everything you need for a comfortable stay. He even had a tear on his face. The man noticed how much Jun liked the place. The boy thanked. Today was a special day because he was able to become a hunter. And now he felt what it was like to get his own home. The representative added that he forgot to say something. There are some who really want to meet Lee Jun. His eyes lit up. He was confused as to who wanted to meet him here. He immediately began to think who it could be. There shouldn't be anyone here who knows anything about the future. The man replied that it was the head of the High League Guild that had saved him. He seems to be interested in the boy. Lee Jun can decline the request if he is uncomfortable meeting him. It was a fairly active guild that has been attracting quite a bit of attention lately. The guy thought for a while and agreed to a meeting with their head. They met. The man introduced first Lee Jun for the chairman and then the leader of the major league that saved him. But the chairman said that he wanted to introduce himself. It was Song-gu. He noticed that Lee Jun was a very tall guy. The boy couldn't believe that he really saw Seong-gu in front of him. This bald head that he missed so much. He asked what he was staring at. Lee Jun apologized if he offended Song-gu, but it wasn't on purpose. The boy understood that he almost made a mistake. He could not even think that he would meet his mentor so soon. He cared a lot about Lee Jun. Song-gu said that he doesn't hold a grudge against him and asked if they had met before, because he looked very familiar. Lee Jun replied that he lost all his memories after becoming a hunter, so he wasn't sure if they could have seen each other before. The boy thanked them for saving his life. Without their help, most likely he would not be standing here now in front of him. Song-gu was impressed by how polite a guy Lee Jun was. He liked it. A forgotten hero who everyone thought was dead. Song-gu, and so they met again. It was night. Everything was dark. Lee Jun was lying in bed in his new apartment. He still could not realize that now this is really happening in his life. But what happened to his body anyway? It seems to have become a stranger. It didn't belong to him. However, when he checked all his birthmarks on the body, it was a good argument that the body was definitely his. Player status: a demon king, a hunter from another dimension. He is also a forgotten hero. But why did Lee Jun have his abilities? She was his because the sinful angel became his patron. The question then arises as to what happened to the real demon king. He didn't know anything else. Li Jun knew that he would not get any answers to his questions. He returned to the past and received the most powerful ability that everyone dreamed of. He got real power, a force that can really change the whole world. The next day, training began at the Hunters Association. All students were sitting in the classroom. When the teacher entered the classroom, Li Jun was asleep in his seat. He did not care at all about his position among the students. He introduced himself and said that his name was Sang-soo, and he would be one of those who would teach them. The students began to discuss the teacher. It was a B-rank hunter, and why they decided to use one of the key members of the association to train the newbies. It turns out that among them there is a hunter on whom the association has high hopes. Li Jun saw the reaction of the class. Each of them wanted to be this chosen one. This was their chance to attract attention and get into an association or a good guild. Everyone considered himself the only one suitable for this role. Sang-soo said that today there will be a seminar about hunters, after which they will be able to choose their weapons and take a combat test. He asked them not to be nervous. And he asked whether the students know how the awakening of hunters takes place. One of the boys raised his hand and said he needed to be chosen as a supernatural patron. Sang-soo said that was the correct answer. Also, the strength of hunters is determined immediately after awakening, but the hunter is able to progress. He asked what methods they knew for pumping. The girl replied that it was either the closing of the gate or the need to earn the patron's attention with some achievement. It is also possible to obtain certain skills or items from additional support. Sang-soo was satisfied with the students' preparation for the seminar. Then he decided to ask a more difficult question. What is the patron's goal? As he expected, there was silence in the class, and no one willing to answer. All the hunters ask themselves this question, but no one knows the answer. Who are the patrons, and why do they choose people, turning them into hunters? Sang-soo turned his attention to Li Jun, because everyone was trying to draw attention to himself, and he just sat motionless in his place. The teacher turned to the boy and asked him to answer his question. The guy got up. Sang-soo said that a free-form answer is accepted. There's no clear explanation. He just wanted to hear his opinion. Li Jun thought it was something like entertainment. Sang-soo didn't understand what he meant by that, and asked to answer in more detail. The guy replied that you choose a character, hunt monsters, and enjoy even if he gets stronger. It's like it's all a game. Sang-soo would not accept such an answer. She did not suit him at all. The Demon King allowed the patrons to see their world as nothing more than a game. And despite all the power he gained, he could not prevent death because of these guesses and comparisons. Patrons seemed to value their secrets very much. The girl chose a sword. Sang-soo said it was a good choice and asked if she was ready. She replied that she was ready. She must fight a hungry goblin. It's okay. Even if she can't defeat this goblin, it will still be up to Sang-soo to decide whether she passed the test or not. The girl agreed to such conditions. He added that there was no point in worrying because this goblin had been thoroughly brainwashed into not being able to kill or critically injure a human. Then it's time to start the test. The goblin was released from the cage. He was approaching the girl very quickly. She also prepared to meet him and raised her weapon. They faced each other in battle. The goblin looked convincing enough, because he was very hungry. He hit the girl. She flew to the side and fell to the floor. Without thinking long, the goblin decided to jump on the enemy from behind. Sang-soo thought that this situation was already dangerous enough, but she managed to counterattack and destroy the goblin. It turned out to tear it in half. The girl lay weak on the floor after the battle. Sang-soo was surprised how they managed to win in this situation and kill the goblin. He graded her on the test and said she passed it. It's time for the last contestant. Li Jun entered the arena with his trusty spear. He had nothing but a shield and a spear. He looked very confident, but the teacher thought it was a very strange combination. Spear and shield. Li Jun understood that he would only be able to attend further graduation courses if the goblin won now. And if he shows himself well here, he will receive many advantages. Sang Su then invited the boy to start the test. But unfortunately, all the goblins are finished, so the test will be held with another monster. Since the enemy changes, so do the rules. He will not need to defeat the monster to pass the test. It will only be necessary to obtain consent for its passage from the teacher. This monster has also been brainwashed and will not be able to inflict a mortal wound. And as long as the B-rank hunter is in the arena, there shouldn't be any problems. The boy thought that they would most likely release a kobold. He was similar in strength to a goblin. Li Jun said that he was fully prepared for the test. Sang Su was surprised by his answer at the seminar, so he asked not to disappoint him now. The test has started. The monster Li Jun will fight in the last test is an orc. He has the strength of 2 grown men and unreal life energy. As you know, only hunters not lower than S rank can resist them. All students who watched the test were shocked, and they never knew that there were orcs at training battles. This became necessary after the hunter woke up immediately with B rank. He appeared out of nowhere and is now one of the strongest hunters in the world. Li Jun was the same hunter who woke up at S rank and dealt with all the goblins and their leader at the D rank gate. How a hunter can do something unreal from the very beginning of his awakening. They cannot miss such a diamond in their association. Sang Su was hoping to see what this boy was capable of. The test started, and the orc started running towards Li Jun. The boy at that time activated the ability of the sinful angel and pierced the orc with a spear. He writhed in pain. His body was suffering, but it seemed that not everything was so easy. He was so dumb that he attacked relying only on his strength without any strategies. Everything happened more easily than Li Jun expected. But the spear stuck in the orc's shoulder, and the hero could not get it and felt the real power of the orc. He grabbed the spear first, and then he hit Li Jun with all his might. But it was lucky that he managed to put up a shield. Students discussed what was happening in the arena. They considered it very dangerous. And in general, giving an orc for a test at the very beginning is nonsense. The instructor must stop him. The lunge was perfect. If another person had been in his place, she would surely have died from such an attack. However, his opponent is a monster that the teacher underestimated. He continued to attack the boy. Sang Su thought if he didn't intervene, things could end badly. He had even prepared his weapon. But when he already wanted to stop this fight, Li Jun completely seized the initiative. He began, thanks to his agility, to outplay the opponent and inflict more and more blows on him. He had enough shield and spear to dominate this battle. His eyes glowed with aggression. His every stroke was unique and powerful. The guy didn't miss a beat. The students did not understand who it was. He didn't look like a rookie at all. He pressed the spear to upset the balance of the orc. Where did he have such instincts? He managed to defeat the orc in class. Sang Su noticed that he had used the ability. Hunters who have just awakened cannot have abilities. He didn't even cast any spells, so it was a high-ranking ability. His shield lost its power after the victory. This is the first time this has happened since the beginning of the Hunter era. His level rose again. Fire mastery increased to level 2. Sang Su knew they couldn't miss him. He was obliged to recruit him into the association, and it did not matter how. It was amazing. The teacher announced the passing of the test. It seems that his weapon can't stand it. Mastery of fire was an amazing ability. Mastery over fire is the foundation of the Demon King's power, and he has used it since the very beginning of becoming a hunter. It could be considered not an ability, but a power, as opposed to skills that cannot be upgraded except with the support of patrons. It can also be enhanced even at the expense of the player's characteristics. But the ammunition simply cannot withstand so much unreal power. In order to use this ability, Lee Jun needs equipment that is at least made of metal. The evening was approaching. It was dark outside, and night was approaching. Lee Jun invited Song-gu and association representative Kim to the housewarming party. Song-gu immediately said that he wasn't sure he should be here at all. But the boy said that this is his housewarming party, and he himself decides who to invite. They chatted a bit over dinner, at the expense of the seminar and the test that was waiting for him, and also places where they would like to go. Kim Soo was appointed curator by Lee Jong. The final test of the seminar classes should be tomorrow, and as far as Kim Soo knew, he would pass at the gate, but he was sure that Lee Jong would have no problem passing this test. Song-gu decided to bring up the subject of the future, and asked the boy what he decided on his offer. He didn't know what it was about, but everything inside told him not to let Lee Jun go. Kim Soo thought the atmosphere was heating up. One of the best guilds in Korea is trying to recruit him. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Lee Jun. Song-gu didn't want to pressure the boy anyway. The boy paused in their conversation. His face showed that he was hesitating. But as a result, he still refuses. Song-gu was upset. He asked about the reason for the refusal, because he himself did not understand how it is possible to refuse such a thing. He thought it was a nice enough proposition for someone who wanted to become an active hunter. He was right, but when he first returned to the past, he compared all possible scenarios for the development of the future. And in the version where he gets close to Song-gu so early, it was very dangerous. The boy replied that he did not want to join any organization yet, but if they need his help, he will gladly help solve any issue. Until that moment, he will pay for his rescue at the gate. Song-gu was happy and shook Lee Jon's hand. Kim Soo did not understand at all what was happening. Is a rookie going to help one of the strongest A-rank hunters in Korea? And this A-rank hunter took this offer seriously. Kim Soo hoped that one day he would begin to understand the hunters after all. Graduation testing is due today. Before starting, Sang-soo wanted to say a few words about the examination process. The venue will be the gate. However, there is no reason to be nervous, since Sang-soo will always be nearby and will be able to protect them when the opportunity arises. He was high enough in rank to be so sure. All the students froze in place and did not make a single sound. This B-rank hunter possessed magical power that surpassed all the disciples here. They were to leave the gate after obtaining all the necessary supplies. Lee Jun noticed that he entered the gate and noticed that the air was somewhat viscous. His classmates also felt it. Sang-soo immediately said a few words about it. This happened because there was a very powerful magical force inside the gate. If everyone is gathered, then it's time to move. When they faced the monsters, he asked to follow his instructions. They walked a short distance from the entrance, and the teacher asked everyone to stop in order to check the territory. Ahead was a bunch of goblins who had smelled them and were heading towards them. They were very hungry, so they were ready to do anything to get food. Sang-soo ordered hunters number 1 and number 3 to prepare their weapons for battle. They held together and raised their weapons. They began to destroy the enemy. These two students did quite well in their task and destroyed the goblins. They demonstrated their skills in practice. The teacher called to prepare number 8 and 16. They very cohesively and technically killed the rest of the goblins. It was their first full fight. He then called upon the hunter Lee Jun. He jumped out very sharply. The students who were nearby did not even notice this. He attacked the rest of the goblins even without his special abilities. They seemed to him just a warm-up. He cut them in half one by one. Even a teacher could envy his skills. The students along with Sang-soo were shocked and didn't even have time to watch every trick of Lee Jun. They weren't sure if he had just woken up. And what was the point of his study here at all? Are all hunters like that? How perfectly he wields weapons is simply amazing. He is as skilled as a B-rank hunter. They could not lose him and simply have to get this genius. Lai Jun, meanwhile, had raised his level again thanks to the fact that he had destroyed quite a few goblins. They continued on their way. But they moved from one dimension to another. Soon they should reach the main boss. He is different from the other goblins they have met before. Therefore, they need to be more careful. Sang Su asked them to get ready and drink the potion. Check all weapons and equipment. Everyone began to follow Sang Su's instructions. And Li Jun thought that the Demon King had the power of a player. He was killed by 12 heroes before he could release his full power. This would not have happened if he had not progressed faster than them. Therefore, he needs to become even stronger as soon as possible, so that he could become more convincing, stronger than the 12 heroes of Aiden or anyone else. Sang Su said they needed to move on. The more they moved into the depth of the gate, the stronger the magical power felt. When they reached the source of this power, they were not even visible. Their bodies were completely enveloped in clouds of magic. They moved side by side to help each other. In case of danger, they had to act according to the instructions. Lai Jun also couldn't understand where she was coming from. Sang Su started yelling for everyone to back off and move towards the exit. As soon as they started to retreat from that place, there was a huge shot of fire. All the students ran to a safe distance. The teacher was the last to leave. He had to either dodge the bullet or face it. He managed to look around several more times. He chose to resist. Sang Su began to slow down to use his superpower. But this magical attack was incredibly powerful. He could barely restrain her so as not to die himself. It was a destructive force, that even the poisonous clicks could not completely repel this attack. He immediately began to look for his recruits with his eyes. They were led by Li Jun, who was ready to protect them from any enemy. Sang Su noticed that Li Jun was unbeatable during this attack. But he did not agree, because he thought he was able to repel this attack only because Sang Su blocked most of the attack. Sinful Angel invites to destroy the great goblin sorcerer. If you answer this request, you can get a good reward. It was a large goblin sorcerer capable of destroying B-rank hunters with ease. It seemed to them that they were not in a low-level gate. There were indeed some problems with setting the level of danger for the gate. One way or another they had to escape. The only one who can fight him is the hunter Sang Su. He will not be an easy opponent for him. He asked everyone to leave the gate and call for reinforcements in the association. Li Jun asked for permission to fight him. The students were stunned by such an act. The teacher told him not to overestimate himself. It was known that he had already defeated many goblins and even an orc. But the abilities of the great goblin sorcerer are not based on physical strength, but on magical strength. His magical attacks can easily kill a B-rank hunter. The great goblin sorcerer has fire magic. The main skills are fire arrows, fireball, wall of fire, and flame shield. Li Jun knows that this monster is strong, and he knows how to fight it. The monsters that were in this dimension are designed so that beginners can easily defeat them. So he asked to give them a chance. Sang Su was sure that it was blind arrogance and nothing more, but he still decided to allow the fight. Li Jun prepared himself and started a duel with the sorcerer goblin. The goblin used all his advantages, fire arrows and fire shield, but Li Jun tried to hold back these attacks. The goblin used massed bullet attacks. But it was a good thing that Li Jun was agile and could dodge all the blows. The students noticed that he was able to completely repel the fireball. Sang Su also noticed this and was shocked, because he did not block it, but absorbed it. How did he do it? Li Jun tried to attack from different directions, but all his attempts ended in failure. It was impossible to get to him through the fire shield. He was really very strong. And most importantly, it is not clear how it can be defeated. They were wrong, and most likely they will not be able to cope. They will simply be smeared with long-range magic. The goblin looked at Li Jun, and the boy used the splitting power. It is only available when a certain level is reached. The fires simply spread over Li Jun. He could easily get the goblin because he was now defenseless. Sang Su thought it impossible. Mastery of fire is an unsurpassed ability, and with her help, Li Jun was able to make his way to the goblin. The boy rushed to him. Although the goblin tried to use some protective abilities, it did not make any sense, because the main task was to get rid of the fire shield, and as a result, he destroyed it with a spear blow. The sorcerer seemed to dissolve into thin air. The students could not believe that he managed to do it. It was a super rookie. The mission was accomplished. The sinful angel was delighted. In connection with the successful completion of the mission, the sinful angel will become his patron. He is given the opportunity to fulfill the call of the familiar. He had wanted this ability for a long time, another skill that made the Demon King so invincible. Meanwhile, Sang Su went with a report to the Hunter Association. He went to see the president. He realized that the reason he wanted to meet him so much had happened during the last final test. And it was all because of an S-rank hunter. And indeed, the president was right. He guessed that his rank was much lower. But Sang Su replied that this time it was the other way around. The president had a lot of confidence in Sang Su. So when he said things like that, it was definitely true. He asked his opinion on how much potential this guy had. Sang Su replied that the situation is such that it is possible that the goal to which the president is so eager can be achieved. The president was quite restrained in his answer, but he wanted to meet Li Jun sooner. The next day, the boy met with representatives of the higher league Song Gu and Kim Su. They expected to see him with the head of a major league guild. Kim Su said that he was very worried when it was revealed that the rank of that gate had increased from rank E to rank S. But apparently, it didn't cause any problems. Song Gu asked if Li Jun had received an invitation to join the association yet. The boy thought about it because it was offered to him as soon as he defeated the Sorcerer Goblin. Sang Su approached him and made a favorable offer based on his emotions. Students saw with their own eyes how this is recruited into the association. But he replied that he still has no desire to associate himself with joining any group. Sang Su was surprised that the boy rejected his perfect proposal that everyone dreams of. But he said, as if he understood him, if he had joined the association, he would have advanced much faster. But if he does it, he won't be able to hide anything from them. And this man was part of the association. He must not contact him under any circumstances. He must avoid him at all costs. Song Gu asked if Li Jun had any food preferences. This was a much more difficult question for him than being recruited by the association. Maybe ramen. Song Gu asked if he likes meat. Li Jun immediately started drooling. And then Song Gu hugged him and offered to go eat tons of meat. The boy returned home and immediately decided to take a shower. Memories of the fight with the goblin immediately began to appear in his head. He went through every shot and defense in his head. Was everything done with sufficient quality? The boy analyzed his every step. It was important for him to become stronger every day, with every fight. He also thought about his current status. None of the normal hunters are able to summon a familiar. Only 12 heroes. Only a handful of people had this ability. Thanks to her, he was able to accomplish all these feats. Therefore, it is not surprising that he managed to defeat countless bone dragon-like monsters. He gained the same powers that the Demon King once had. Then the summoned familiars should be no worse than his. He had one chance to summon a familiar guaranteed by the sinful angel, and he decided to use it right now. The next day, Lee Jun came to the big league. He was waiting for Kim Soo there. When he entered the office, he immediately decided to share the interesting news that the media had published news related to Lee Jun. It said that a super rookie had defeated a dungeon boss that only an A-rank hunter could kill. Kim Soo said he heard about it, and it was not clear to him, just like the rest, how he managed to do it. And why didn't he tell about it last night? He got to the first line, but there is no personal information about him on it. But most likely, the higher ranks in the association already had it. Hunters have recently become more popular than most idols. But it didn't seem like Lee Jun was even interested in it. The boy said that he had much more important things to discuss with Kim Soo. The representative immediately asked what it was. The guy said he wanted to take part in clearing the dungeons. He would go into dungeons and destroy level 1 goblins and other monsters. It was training and leveling up for him. He wanted to activate the familiar, but in order to do so, he believed that it was necessary to destroy monsters. He continued because he remembered his promise. Lee Jun had to quickly become the strongest, to have sufficient influence on others. And so he cleared his first dungeon. Lee Jun turned his attention to his bracelet, and it didn't react at all to all the monsters he killed, even after the death of the boss. And he did not understand how to use it at all. The familiar must be unrealistically powerful or endowed with special skills. But he does not manage to absorb a single soul. All along he thought that monster souls were needed. Was he wrong? When Lee Jun cleared the dungeon, he was met by Kim Soo. The man greeted him. He completed his 4th dungeon raid. If he has any items he wants to auction, he can give them to Kim Soo. He must have dealt with the inventory. As soon as the item is sold at the auction, the funds will immediately go to his account. He asked when he could enter the next gate. Kim Soo said that unfortunately, he doesn't have a gate that can be reserved right now. It was very strange. The world is literally torn apart by gates that cannot be closed, but he cannot reserve even one for himself. Kim Soo replied that a guild had recently appeared that was gradually building its name. They single-handedly reserved about 20 low-level gates. Even if they are low-level, one single guild was able to reserve all 20 for themselves. Usually the association rejects such requests, but since all previously reserved gates have been cleared, they had no choice but to grant this request. Lee Jun guessed that the head of this guild might be called Choi Sung. Kim Soo confirmed this information. This is the Guild of the Army of the North. It was founded by Choi Sun, who was nicknamed Super Rookie before Lee Jun appeared. Soon this person will earn the title of hero and establish himself as a subordinate of the 12 gods. And besides, he will become famous as a merciless killer and an absolute tyrant. Finally, he will meet him. It was raining heavily. People demanded to stop the construction and gathered entire protests. The assistant told the manager that these rallies were getting out of control. What to do next? He said that they are nothing but ants. If they destroy their home here, they will build a new one somewhere else. There is no reason to worry about the lives of ants. Even if they let these slaves survive, they will still be unhappy. This was the method of ruling the head of the Army of the North. They relied only on aggression and evil. These people could only blackmail humanity for their needs. They are absolutely not interested in human values. After that incident, half of the residents of the village where Lee Jun lived died. It was a terrible tragedy. He remembered her very well in detail. Lee Jun heard someone calling for help in the nearby street. It was a man's voice. He saw how several hunters beat and robbed an ordinary townsman. They provoked him in order to find an excuse for abuse and torture. These were not hunters, but real bandits. He begged them to stop and not mock him. Lee Jun approached them and asked what they were doing and how they could afford it. Moreover, this person was weaker than them. They mockingly asked who he was. The guy replied that he just heard strange sounds and came up. He thinks they are bullies. One of the bandits started shouting and did not allow such rude communication with him. Li Jun said that they were the first to start acting like this. They were scared because they realized that a real hunter was in front of them. Li Jun turned to the man and asked what had happened to him, and why they were picking on him. One of the boys replied that this grandfather had injured him with his cart, and he simply demanded his compensation from him. Grandpa stood up and said it was a lie, because they were the first to throw his cart and start beating him. Li Jun asked why they broke the grandfather's cart. Since he was also a hunter, he should understand. Everyone who attacks him challenges him. Therefore, he saw no problem in the fact that he broke it. He was already beginning to perceive all of Li Jun's actions as an attack in his direction. Jun said he was letting them go quietly because they had done enough. He will be able to let them go, since they did not seem to cause any serious damage to the grandfather. But it didn't suit them, and one of the boys pounced on Li Jun. But he shouted that no one dares to order him. He dodged the blow. Then he grabbed the hand of the bandit, after which he threw him over him. He ended up on the ground. Now he was not so brave and rude. There is one more offender left, because the first one was unconscious. The next one had already drawn his weapon. Li Jun never thought he would see a weapon in such a place. The hooligan seemed quite sure of what would happen next. He asked if Jun had a guild yet. Therefore, they believed that they were on a completely different level than such garbage. Li Jun maimed the other bully without any problem. He skillfully knocked the weapon out of his hands and ended this circus. If he didn't understand guilds, he would have thought that their guild was no more than a mother's under her skirt. After eliminating them, Li Jun called the relevant agency to prosecute them. But they continued to prove that grandfather attacked them first. Kim Soo thanked him for understanding this situation and helping them. One way or another, an attack by a hunter on an ordinary person is a very serious crime. Kim Soo confirmed this, and he said that this is all the concern of the association and thanked him for his help. They saw two men talking. They were worried that the guild would want to take revenge on their grandfather, but the association would definitely look after and protect him, so there was no point in them worrying. Li Jun remembered that one of the bullies was in the guild, but where was she? It just so happened that this was the Northern Army Li Jun had asked about earlier. It was impossible to take all the low-level gate contracts without help from the inside. The Guild of the Northern Army and the rotten hunters from the very middle of the association. Li Jun had hoped that they would be much quieter, but that was simply not possible. As expected, 2 days later, Li Jun was called up to the association as a striker. A few days passed, and the grandfather whom Li Jun saved changed his testimony. Those who attacked him became innocent, and Li Jun, who helped the old man, became the attacker. He understood everything, but still felt bad because of this injustice. Kim Soo asked not to be nervous about it. In any case, everything will be fine. The association is not so rotten yet. What he didn't know was that for Li Jun from the future, the association was rotten from its inception. Kim Soo invited the boy inside. He was asked if he did not remember anything from the moment of the incident at the gate. He replied that it was true, as well as the incident that happened a few days ago. He was the first to report everything and detained members of the Northern Army. The guy confirmed everything. He was asked if it was true that he had put old man Lee Moon's life in danger and had given false testimony about the North Korean guild members at the expense of the first attacker. Li Jun said it was a lie. He was asked if he wanted to say that all their testimony was a lie. The guy replied that it was true. An elderly man who was a participant in this situation was called into the room. This man was asked if it was true that Li Jun attacked him, because he testified that members of North Korea attacked the man and him. He looked away because he understood that he would have to lie. He was blackmailed and everything went rotten, as expected. He asked the man not to worry, because he already knew the truth. Grandfather said that Li Jun attacked him. The man thanked his grandfather and said that he could go. He left the interrogation room, but it was clear from his eyes and behavior that he had no other choice now. His face was tired. Most likely, he was threatened with the massacre of his loved ones. The worker asked if Li Jun had anything to add to what was said. The guy threw the phone on the table, on which he filmed absolutely everything that happened that day on that street. The employee was shocked, but he was forced to accept this evidence and provide it to the investigation. That was all he wanted to add to his words. In any case, the association knew why the testimony had changed, but only the grandfather would be prosecuted for false testimony. And he cannot do anything in this situation. He still lacked strength. Song-gu has already seen the news. They met Li Jun again. Kim-soo called Song-gu because he no longer has any connections in the association. Of all the contacts that remained, he was the most influential person he could contact. Li Jun thanked them both for making time for him. All Song-gu could say was that Li Jun was on the loose. While they were talking, the grandfather, who was being protected by Li Jun, came up. He began to fall to his knees and beg for forgiveness. These bastards said they would kill his granddaughter soon if he didn't say what they demanded. He just couldn't let that happen. Instead of helping, he brought even more problems. Kim-soo didn't understand. If the Northern Army was blackmailing him, then why he decided to tell about it only here and now. If he had said it earlier, his granddaughter would have been in danger. But what has already been done cannot be changed, and now he can only ask for forgiveness and pray. Song-gu promised that his granddaughter would be safe, and he would take care of it personally. He asked not to worry about these bastards and to go home. He listened to Song-gu, got up and went home. Li Jun developed a habit of filming everything because he had been in such situations so many times. From this day on, he must not let anything out of his sight. They continued to chat and saw the president of the Northern Guild passing nearby. At first, they exchanged glances. Song-gu and Li Jun were surprised to see him here, because he usually doesn't leave his office. He approached and said that he could not even believe that he could meet the head of one of the largest guilds here. He asked if they were that close to the newcomer about whom there were so many rumors. Kim-soo did not understand how he found out about all this. Is the worm in the association his personal informant? He held out his hand and introduced himself as the head of the army of the north. His name is Choi Seong. Song-gu thought about it, but then shook his hand. It was a long handshake. He tried to pretend that he was glad to meet him. He decided to warn him. And he said that he should not be so arrogant if he does not want to become an enemy for him and this newcomer. Choi Sung took his hand away and was offended at how he was treated. He was even scared, because no one could talk to him like that before. Song-gu even decided to paraphrase his speech a bit. He said that Choi Sung would never match him in life and advised him to be more careful if he didn't want to die. Kim-soo and Li Jun were sitting in a cafe, where they discussed the situation that happened. Kim-soo still couldn't come to terms with the fact that they were just fined when they tried to kill an innocent person. In the future, hunters are untouchable. Li Jun decided to switch to Grandpa and said that the most important thing is that everything is good with him. Kim-soo said that lying to a hunter is a serious crime. But thanks to Li Jun capturing everything on camera, the actions of the Northern Army were found to be wrong. They issued only the usual warning and let them go home. Most likely, Song-gu also influenced this, but he asked Kim-soo how things were going in the army of the North.